On August 21, 2026, something happened in Billboard's Fan Army Face-Off that had never happened before. A'TIN won. Not their first title. Not their second. Not their third. Their fourth. And this time, the fandom behind Filipino group SB19 didn't just beat another major fandom in the bracket. In the final round of Billboard's Fan Army Face-Off, A'TIN went head-to-head with the Harries, the fan army behind one of the biggest pop stars alive, Harry Styles. And they came out on top. That single result just rewrote the record books. A'TIN is now the winningest fandom in Billboard Fan Army Face-Off history, with 4 consecutive victories. But here's the thing. The win itself is only half the story. What actually happened on the road to get there? That's where this gets interesting. Because A'TIN didn't walk into this year's tournament as underdogs looking for their big break. They walked in as the team to beat. 3 years running, they'd taken the crown. A fourth would mean something no fandom had ever pulled off. The outright record for the most consecutive wins in Fan Army Face-Off history. Which meant there was no element of surprise left. Everyone already knew what A'TIN could do. The only real question was whether they could do it one more time. Against a field that started with 64 artists, some of the biggest names in music among them. The tournament kicked off in July, with fandoms representing everything from pop and hip-hop to K-pop and P-pop entering the bracket. SB19 came in as one of the names to watch, purely because their fanbase had already proven, 3 times over, that they weren't going anywhere. Then the voting began. They moved past Hilary Duff, Megan Thee Stallion, Melanie Martinez, and by the quarterfinals, only 8 fandoms remained. By the time the field narrowed to the final 8, SB19 had already gone through several major international acts, and A'TIN was still standing. At that point, the record wasn't a hope anymore. It was 1 win away. But the closer they got, the harder it got. Every fandom left in the bracket was a heavyweight. And eventually, only 2 remained. A'TIN for SB19, and the Harries for Harry Styles. Think about how different those 2 stories are for a second. Harry Styles is about as globally recognizable as a pop artist gets. SB19, on the other hand, is a story of a Filipino group that spent years building an audience from outside the traditional centers of the music industry, slowly turning P-pop into something the rest of the world couldn't ignore. So when those 2 fan bases collided in the final, it wasn't just another round of voting. It was the last test. The hardest one, and A'TIN won it. Billboard confirmed the result on August 21st. A'TIN had defeated the Harries in the championship round, locking in a 4th Fan Army Face-Off victory. For wins, that part is undeniable. But it's worth pausing on what those 4 wins actually represent. A'TIN first won this competition in 2023, then again in 2024, a 3rd time in 2025. And now, a 4th in 2026. Before this year, that 3-year streak had already tied them with T-ara's Queens for the longest run in the competition's history. A 4th win didn't just add another trophy. It broke that tie completely and put A'TIN in a category of their own. And that says something bigger than a scoreboard. 1 win can be a breakthrough. 2 can be momentum. 3 becomes a streak. 4 becomes a record. Winning twice starts to look like momentum. Winning 3 times starts to look like a pattern. But 4 years in a row? That's not a pattern anymore. That's just who they are. Here's what's easy to miss in all of this. A'TIN didn't suddenly become powerful this month. They've been building this for years. What the Billboard competition does is put a number on something that's usually impossible to measure. People throw around words like dedicated or passionate to describe fandoms all the time. Those words get used so often, they stop meaning much. But Fan Army Face-Off turns that vague idea into an actual contest. Rounds, opponents, a winner. And 4 years straight, A'TIN has been the last fandom left holding the trophy. Which brings us to something else worth noticing. This win didn't happen in a vacuum. This has been a massive year for SB19 outside of the voting bracket too. They performed at Lollapalooza in Chicago. They brought their music to Japan. They played Summer Sonic. Audiences who may have only known SB19's name or never heard of them at all were suddenly seeing them live. But while SB19 was out there physically crossing into new markets, A'TIN was doing something that doesn't depend on geography at all. A fan in the Philippines and a fan on the other side of the planet can rally around the exact same goal, vote in the exact same bracket, support the exact same group at the exact same time. Distance stops mattering. That doesn't mean every single person who's heard of SB19 is automatically part of A'TIN. It doesn't mean this one online contest proves SB19 is bigger than every other artist on the planet. That would be a stretch. A fan voting competition measures one specific thing: how well a fandom can mobilize. And on that one measure, A'TIN has become almost impossible to beat. Because when this tournament opened, A'TIN didn't need to convince anyone that SB19 deserved the spotlight. They needed to convince people to show up and vote, round after round. And the result, every single time, was another win. There's also something worth sitting with in the timing of all this. SB19 spent this year pushing into brand new audiences outside the Philippines. At the exact same time, their fandom was busy defending a title they'd already held for 3 straight years. One side of the story was about the group introducing themselves to the world. The other was about the fans making sure nobody forgot who they already were. An artist can create a moment on a stage in a new country. A fandom is what keeps that moment alive, long after the lights go down. And when Billboard hands fans a direct head-to-head competition, that kind of support becomes something you can actually see. Honestly, the most important word in this whole story might not be record. It might be again. A'TIN won again. After 3 previous titles. After walking into the tournament already carrying the weight of being defending champions. After grinding through an entire new bracket. After facing down one of the biggest fan armies in pop music in the final round. And they still came out on top. At a certain point, the question stops being whether A'TIN can win this competition. They've already answered that 4 separate times. The more interesting question now is what this means for what comes next. Because SB19 isn't slowing down. There are still new stages ahead. New festivals. New markets. New music. And every single time this group steps into a new space, A'TIN is right there with them. That doesn't mean every fan votes in every contest, or that every supporter is glued to their phone during voting season. But it does prove that the core of this fandom keeps showing up, year after year, around one shared goal. And that's exactly what this competition was built to test. So today, the headline is simple. A'TIN beat the Harries. A'TIN won the 2026 Billboard Fan Army Face-Off. And A'TIN now holds the all-time record, alone, with 4 victories. But maybe the real headline is this. 3 years ago, this looked like a breakthrough. The year after, it looked like momentum. The year after that, it became a streak. And now, it's a record. Records change the conversation. Because from here on out, every future Fan Army Face-Off with SB19 in it will carry one hanging question. Can A'TIN make it 5? Can they push the record even further? Or does someone finally break the run? Nobody knows yet. What we do know is this. No fandom has won this competition 4 times in a row. A'TIN now stands alone at the top. 4 straight titles. 4 times at the very top. And this time, they got there by beating Harry Styles' own fan army in the final round. SB19 might be the 5 people standing on stage. But every time Billboard opens this competition, A'TIN steps into the arena right alongside them. And once again, they showed up. And once again, they won. Subscribe to Vyntra PPOP and stay with us for the next story.